Hey guys, and welcome back. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is setting up a Google Calendar API, or I guess just working with the Google Calendar API for our voice assistant. So I saw a lot of comments on the previous videos saying that you guys want some kind of calendar support. So whether that be, asking the bot for your next event in the day, or adding an event or changing something or whatever it is, we're going to add a few of those different functions in here. But the first thing that we need to do, and what this video is kind of going to be dedicated to, is just getting set up with this API. Now, fortunately for us, Google actually writes a ton of really helpful kind of quick start tutorials on how to use this. So we're just going to follow along with this today. It's pretty straightforward and you could probably figure it out without actually watching the video if you just want to read through this. But for anyone running into any issues, I'm going to walk you through it step by step here. So the first thing we need to do is go to this link here that I'm going to have in the description down below. And you're going to make sure that you sign into the correct Google account. Now, I know for me, I have a bunch of different Google accounts. For this tutorial, I'm just using one that's like a random one that I just created because you guys are going to actually see my credentials while I do this. Now, what I'm going to do here is start by turning on the Google Calendar API. Now, what we're going to do is click Enable the Google Calendar API. And for you guys, if this is your first time working with like Google Developer Console or whatever this is called, it may ask you to create an application. All you need to do is just give it some kind of name. I just name mine like test or tutorial or Python or whatever you want, and then go ahead and click next, and then it should bring you to a page that looks like this. From here, we're going to download our client configuration, which is going to come in the form of a JSON file in the bottom left-hand corner of our screen. This just stores the information that we need to sign in and authenticate with Google, which we need to do every time we actually want to activate this API and start using it from Python. Now, what we're going to do here with this credentials.json is we're going to put it in the working directory of our Python script. So hopefully you guys know where that is. I have to find mine, which I believe is here. I was already testing this out, so I'm going to delete that one and just drag in, I guess I have to put these like split screen, and just drag in my credentials here. So make sure that's in the same directory as your main.py file or whatever file you were using for the last video. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can move on to step 2, which is installing the pip modules, which is Google Auth Lib and the Python API. So what this is going to do is just allow you to authenticate and all of that, and we're going to get through this code in a second that tells you how to do that. So I'm just going to copy this. Going to open up a command prompt window, and I'm going to type this by just hitting enter. Now, obviously, I already have this all installed, as you guys can see here, but that's all you need to do. Again, make sure you're in the right virtual environment and that pip is working correctly. And then, if you already have this installed, because of this upgrade here, it's going to upgrade to the newest version, which is obviously what we want. Okay, awesome. So now that we have that, we're actually kind of almost done setting this up, but we just need to actually copy all of this code from the web page here and run it somewhat within our script. So we're going to do a little bit of refactoring here. We're going to copy this. We're going to open up our Python script from the previous videos, which looks something like this. Yours might look a little bit different. And then we're just going to kind of paste this code in and refactor it a little bit. So I'm just going to put it at the bottom of my screen here. And what I'm going to do is just kind of start moving some of these import statements up again to the top of our program. So I'm going to copy all of these. And make sure you actually paste them above all of these import statements, because whenever you import the future module, you actually need to have that at the beginning of your program here. So make sure you have that all the way up at the top. So all of these go before, OS, time, and all the other imports we did in the previous video. Next, I'm going to take scopes here and that comment, I guess, and just throw it up at the top of my program here because I like to have it like all my global variables defined at the top. Then what I'm going to do is kind of just clean up some of these comments here that I don't actually really need and just get rid of them here. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of talk about what this code does, and we're actually going to run the program, but I'm also just going to get rid of this little bit here that says text equals get audio if hello in text, because for right now we don't actually want that. So clean up some of these indentation, and then we should be good to actually test this out. Okay, so what this script is actually going to do that we just downloaded is it's going to create kind of like a local cache of your credentials so that every time you sign into Google, you don't need to do what we're about to do. So what this does is uses the pickle module to actually open up your credentials, which is from that JSON file, and then log you into Google, which you guys are going to see in a second, save kind of that token information and all of that, so that every time we run this, we don't need to kind of, I guess, what is it, like validate ourselves or re-sign in, which actually ends up taking a little bit of time. So let's actually just run this now. By the way, to run something in Sublime Text, I've been hitting Control B. Give this a second, and you can see it's actually going to pop up this here to sign into your Google accounts. Now I've blurred my other ones out, but I'm going to use this test send email account that I made a while ago that doesn't have anything important on it, and it's going to say this app isn't verified. What we actually need to do is click on advanced and click go to quick start. I know it says it's unsafe, but it's not. It's just because you're opening it from Python and it doesn't think that it's a valid program. So now what I'm going to do is click on allow this to view my calendars, but I could also allow them. Actually, wait, I think that's it. Yeah, so we'll do that and we will hit allow. So now we're actually giving that app that we just used, the Python script, access to view our calendars. So we'll go ahead and click allow there. And now you can see this says the authentication flow has completed. You may close this window. Awesome. So there we go. And now we are actually authenticated and ready to go. Okay, so I had a quick bug there because I don't think I waited long enough, but essentially what should happen is after you authenticate yourself the first time, so you run the program, what it does is it generates a pickle file, which actually looks like this, so token.pickle, which stores that credential information. So now every time after when we run the program, what ends up happening is we actually don't need to go through that kind of web browser thing where we sign into the account and click allow. It should just automatically authenticate us and then actually print out the first 10 upcoming events that we have. Now that's what this bottom part is doing here when we get the time and we have this if statements down here. This part up here is doing all of your kind of credentials and logging in. All right, so what we're going to do now is just refactor this code a little bit so it works better for our actual use. And then we're going to get into some specific applications of Google Calendar, like actually using this bot to ask, what is the next event, or do I have an event on Thursday in the next video? But what I need to do here is kind of split up this function into two. And what I want to do is have one function that authenticates the user, and that happens before the bot even really starts running, kind of in the main script, so that way we don't have to wait for this token file to be generated before we actually want to run this voice assistant and start speaking to it. The next function I'm going to have is what's going to actually get the events for us. And so what we're pretty much going to do is just split this into two. I'm going to show you how to do that pretty easily. So I'm going to start by renaming this main function to authenticate _ Google. Now I could do calendar as well, but I think that's pretty straightforward for right now. And what I'm going to do is actually add a return statement kind of in the middle here that says return service. So what we're going to do is have this function run at the beginning of our program and return to us a service that contains the Google Calendar for our user. So, or I guess for us in this case. Then what we're going to do is create another function here. So after this return statement, that's going to be called get _ events. And what we're going to do in here is put two parameters. So the first one is going to be n, and the second one is going to be service. Now what n is going to do is be the amount of events we want to get, and service is going to be, well, the service that was returned to us from authenticate Google. So that way we can just pass through this service and pass through the number of events we want to get, and we are able to do that. So what I'm going to do is start by, in the main line of my program, just calling authenticate Google, and that's actually going to be equal to service. So service equals authenticate Google, and since we're returning the service that contains the calendar with all of the events, we can store that in a variable here, and whenever we call get events, we can simply pass it through. So anyways, we're not done with get events yet. What we're going to do is just change wherever it says 10 essentially to say n, so that this will be kind of more dynamic and be able to get any amount of events that we want. So I'm going to make this print statement an f string and put in here n, so it stands for getting the upcoming n events, which will be however many we pass through. And then what I'm going to do is change max results here to be n. So now what's going to happen is we're only going to get however many events we pass through to the parameter. So now I'm simply going to say get _ events here. I'm going to pass in n as like just say 2 in this case, and then service will pass in there as well. And now what I'm going to do is just run this program and see if everything is working. Now, apparently when I run this on Sublime Text, it takes like a really long time, so I'll fast forward until it actually shows it. but you can run it through command prompt and usually it runs way faster. Okay, so there we are. You can see that we have now these two events that came up. So these are the first two that show up in my calendar. So test event and then Thursday event. And that is pretty much how this works. Now, obviously, we're going to make this more advanced in the next video and actually use the voice assistant to trigger this and give us the information and read it out to us. But for now, that should hopefully give you enough to maybe play with a little bit and figure out how to do things. We already know how to check if the user has said specific things, so you can probably match that up and read out some of these events and all of that. So with that being said, if you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, if you have any ideas for the rest of the series, please leave them in the comments down below, as I was always looking for those.